Hello, everybody again. I hope everybody is able to hear us well. I'm gonna start with a short introduction about Sofia Revit User Group, and then we're gonna continue with today's presentation. First, let me share my screen and say a couple of words about Sofia Revit User Group. So we started the group back in 2018. Our main goal is to bring together anyone who is interested in BIM, in digitalization, and in specifics in Revit here locally in Bulgaria. But the past couple of months, we expand uh, our practice even with some of these international webinars, which goal is to bring international experience to our local group and to bring international knowledge. This is our website where you could get all the information about Sofia Revit User Group. It's sofiarug.com. Here we could see all the meetings that we have live, the live meetings, and also you could see here the section with our sponsors and also some useful links here down below. And one of the main places that you could learn more about each meeting, either a webinar or a live meeting. It's our YouTube channel, so we do have two video playlists, one with the web talks and one with the live meetings. So if you missed any of our previous meetings, this is the place to go. So this is the short introduction that I wanted to present to you, and now I'm gonna give the word to today's guest, and he'll tell more about himself and about the topic. So, Ben, it's you.
Thank you. It's good to be here. Thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity to talk about Evolve Lab and Veras and the products that we offer. My name is Ben Guler. I'm a partner CTO at Evolve Lab. My background's actually in architecture, so I have been an end user first. So a lot of the products that we have and things that we do kind of come from that end user perspective. And today we're going to look at AI visualization. Of one of our main products is Veras, and we're going to just kind of go in through the application, what it does, and some practical uses right now. Primarily because this is a Revit user group, we're going to start with Revit, and maybe we'll have some sketches at the end. But just how we could use the application in our kind of co-authoring design process. So yeah. Anything else before we start and get right into it, Peter?
Maybe just to let the people know that if they do have some questions, they're free to ask, and even this is encouraged. So whatever pops up, just by you could write in the chat or uh, just ask.
Yeah, I'd love to have this organic. I don't have a kind of a slide deck that I wanted to go that we'll go through. We're just going to go right into the software and start modeling and rendering right away, just to kind of show the organic. So if there's any questions or any comments along the way, feel free to interject. And if not, I'm just going to keep on demoing and we can have more questions at the end. Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. I think that needs to be enabled for me.
Just a second, maybe. Now you should be. Just a second. Yeah.
Oh, okay, got it.
Now you should be able to share your screen. Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Great. Okay, awesome. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes. So
Awesome.
you could continue. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. So all I did here is I just made 2 boxes real quick in Revit. And one of the things with Veras, it's really good at the ideation stage where you kind of are starting or are just kind of at the massing level. You're starting to kind of play with different volumes. And then gradually, as you can kind of get more defined, you could get more control through Veras. But I think it's a really good place to start. So let's see if I could. There's like a little bar here. I'm trying to hide. Oh, there it is. Okay, great. So Zoom has a little bar, hides my buttons. I can't click anywhere. All right, we're good now. Okay, so I'm just gonna go to 3D view here. As we can see, we have our little masses here that we just modeled, just 4 walls. And I hid the levels because I didn't want those to kind of interfere with the rendering. Okay, so I have the masses here. I do want to do a few things here with this view. Say I'll go maybe realistic for a second and see what other settings I'd want to turn on here. So here we'll go to lighting, background. We could do a little gradient or sky gradient. Let's see. There you go. That should be good. So we could get some kind of foreground and sky. And this is probably the base of where we could start to kind of use the application already. So I'll just frame a view here real quick and then spool up. So in the Evolve Lab, there's an Evolve Lab tab after the app gets installed. And then you could just press that button, the start button, and then we could see the our view here. So I could change the width, frame my shot here. And then off the bat, we have just some presets here that we can click from. I already just started 2 renderings with this kind of massing. And so here, maybe I'll start 2 of those, and maybe I'll start 2 of these. So, okay, there you go. So it did something. So you can see here how, you know, we have kind of this basic kind of outline of my volumes, but there's additional detail that was added per what was in the prompt. So like it added windows. So you can see here that because there's a lot of kind of unidentified, you know, geometry, if you will, in these blank areas, the engine took the liberty of filling that in with certain things. So like in this case, it added windows, you know, so on and so forth. You kind of see how what happened there. So this is kind of the start of like ideation. We could start to play with, you know, massing, and it's just, you know, the design itself and even materiality. So you could say, let's say, and I'm going to start to kind of go into the compose mode. So the compose mode, you can see here how we kind of ran a few different, those 2 different presets. You can see how those 2 different presets had different settings here and different prompts. So let's say if I go back to this one, for example, and I liked everything about it. Let's say I wanted to explore this idea further and change maybe the wood into something else. So one way we could do that is if we liked this kind of rendition, we could kind of lock that rendition with this seed. So if I were to render this twice, you'll see how by locking the seed, the image should be exactly the same image. So we'll let that kind of just render once to show that. But what's neat about this feature is we could go in here and say, instead of timber building, we could say, let's see, monolithic concrete. So if I render that one, now you'll see how these 2 are the same, almost at the same images because we had the same seed. But the next one that I just queued up right here has everything the same except that one text that said monolithic concrete. So we could see how, yeah, there you go. So that kind of changed. So that one actually still did a little bit more change here where like the windows changed further. But so again, we could start with massing and kind of do a lot of different iterations on the massing to get different ideas and just kind of explore that. Yeah, any questions or comments so far on what I've shown so far?
I think There aren't any, and if something pops up in the chat, I'll let you know.
Okay, cool. So I'll move from this one. So this is, again, just kind of a massing. And I'll start to load one of the sample models on here. So close that out. We'll use this one. And same thing, we'll do a little bit of setup here. So let's see, make this realistic. Then I think I want to have a perspective view. So this is gonna change here. There you go. And then I will turn off the edges, I think. I do want to do that. So, 1 second here. So if I move up my view here, refresh this, I should be able to see my model, my project. Okay, cool. So let's just find a view here that we might want to start to play with. So I'll just kind of zoom here and I don't know, something like this. And then I do want to change this guy so that we have let's see, our background to have the gradient. Okay, and maybe also time of day. I think it looks kind of has that glow. So these I'll show you later, but these settings do kind of start to come into play at different settings. So if we use certain settings in the app where we want to keep have more retention, the colorization could actually come in, and you could kind of see how these settings kind of affect the output. Let's see here if I change. Let's see. Okay, we'll leave it at that for now. Okay, so if I go back into my app here, I'll refresh my view. All right, and yeah, we'll start a few renders. I'll just go back to the presets here. All right. So in this view, it's pretty simple. We have some kind of background and foreground of the building, the design itself. Okay, let's see here. Okay, there you go. Oh, I actually like this one. This looks pretty cool.
Now we do have a question. Are you able? Do you prefer me to read the question to you, or you're gonna read it by yourself from the chat?
Yeah, no, go ahead and read it. Give me half a minute. I just have a little thing I have to turn on over here. 1 second, sorry.
Sure, no
My
worries.
apologies.
No worries. We're gonna wait a bit. Sorry for the little interruption. We're gonna continue right after the break. Gonna need some technical time. And this is a good time for anybody who has any question to post it here in the chat. We could continue with answering some of the questions after Ben is here.
My apologies for that.
No worries.
Back online. Okay, so yeah, go ahead and please read the questions.
So the question is, so the same prompt and the same seed gives you always the same result, which
Yes.
I kind of doubt it.
Yes. So yeah, let me explain that a bit further. So it will give you the same exact result if all the inputs are exactly the same. Meaning if you change your camera angle a little bit, that's not the same input anymore. Therefore, you won't get the same exact result. If that makes sense. So the same seed, let's say, actually, we're going to use the seed a few times in these examples as well. Like for this example right here, let's say we have this rendition, right? And I want to change the material, or let's say, that's what they want to say. I want to say during a winter, but I want to keep everything else the same. So actually, I'll render it twice again, so you'll see how it's a different rendering
Okay.
with the same settings. But yeah, so I think there's some confusion about the seed. You can't right now use the seed to kind of change your model angles from different points of view to get the same kind of exact materiality. It doesn't work that way because it just works on kind of the way that the noising process works. So it doesn't like we have something different for that that we're working on actually to be able to kind of have exactly the same materiality from different angles of the building, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this will be very very useful even for interiors. Maybe we're gonna cover the interiors later. Okay,
Right.
so if you're okay, there's one more question
Mhm.
here. In relation to the geometry override, I wanted to ask if there is a hierarchy on how Veras recognizes geometry, and are there any geometrical elements that are not so well acknowledged by it? For example, wall geometry takes precedent over curtain panels.
I see. So the geometry override is not making any kind of discrimination between the type of elements that it is. So if it's a wall panel, it just looks at kind of density. So what I mean by that is like how close lines are together, like how many, like if you look at the pixelization of this image, for example, there's a lot of density here, there's a lot of line work here and here, or this whole kind of area has a lot of line work. There's very little line work here, let's say. This is a bit more like there's not much to respect essentially, but there's a lot of line work here in this area and not so much line work on this other areas where it's kind of flattened. So where we have kind of like that right. So if that makes sense, like that's it respects kind of just kind of the density of detail that is being presented. So the more detail you have your model and more objects you have in there, those will come through. If you kind of leave it open, like the sky, for example, it starts to kind of get creative, and there's not much there to respect beyond the kind of the gradient.
I guess the understanding of the tool is not based on Revit elements, hierarchy, or whatever is in the model, is based on pixels.
Exactly. You said it more succinct than I did.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. In fact, if we lock this seed, so this image is the same as this one, or it's very close. You can see how I'm changing the renders here because the seed is the same. I could just render this one a few times with like, okay, this one, 20, let's go 48, 66, and I don't know, 100, sure. So I rendered 4 of them that will gradually change the geometry override until like you'll see how much kind of like from the original kind of Revit model, how much that starts to kind of deviate in the further rendering. So this first one here is at the 48, for example. So between 48 and this one, you can see that in the top, in this top band here, it added windows. So there's no windows here in the original, but it started to convert those as windows. Or if I go to the next one, this one's actually a bit lower. So you can see here, this is 0. This one's 21, 48. This is the 100 one actually, and this is the 66. The 100 one, I think it even started to kind of change the geometry. See how kind of the angle over here kind of started to go down. So I really kind of loosely kind of respected what's in Revit. Now this is still very useful for like when we're working with sketches and other drawings that are kind of a bit looser, and you don't want those to actually be artifacts in your design. So yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think we do use the seed a lot, especially once we get something that we like. So let's say this was again, I want to change this to monolithic concrete building, and then let's say during spring, and get a few of those. Yeah, once you get other uses would be kind of like if you wanted to make changes to your geometry. So I'll show that next. Let's say we render a few more options here, and then we we choose one that we like. So there's this one. This one looks like say we go with something like this, or this one even. Let's see our last one. No, we could lock them with this one actually. So let's say we liked kind of this rendition, this material usage. With the seed, what we could do is once you lock it, let's say if you were to change the, let's see, maybe there's a Maybe this is hosted to a level. If it's not, it's okay. We could just do a little override. Or maybe I could just stretch the building myself. Let's see what happens. Might break some things. Okay, yeah, there's some elements there that are going to be problematic. Let's just go with this. I know it's not correct. I know the roof is not correctly being displayed there. But if I look back at the Revit model and I kind of update the design here. Okay, so that's our new model. And I were to kind of lock this seed. If I render that, we'll see how that affected, like how part of the image stayed the same because that was part of the original design versus kind of when you stretch it, that part will be different. Okay, so I actually ran it with this one. Now we can run it with both actually. So we can see both the difference. Yeah, the really neat part about it is kind of how much we can just try different prompts and different ideas, writing it in the text and exploring that. So it's almost like when you're making a mood board or you're looking at Pinterest and you put together like your design palette, you could virtually kind of do that and also paste those onto your project. So, okay, let's see here what happened. So this one is from, okay, these two I think are the same seed. Yeah. So even with this one, it seems like some of it stayed the same, like some of these pixels stay the same with kind of the pattern over there. But I could see how like the flowers went away. And the sky, this part remained the same, but a lot of the sky kind of changed. Let's look at these two.
The lightings inside are different
Yeah.
as well, but
Lighting, yeah.
so
These two are a bit closer. So
even the prompt is the same and the seed is the same. Once you change the geometry, it changes the end result as well.
yeah, ever so slightly, yeah. Yeah, these ones are a bit closer. You can see here how at least the kind of geometry that it's being kind of or the kind of the texture of the concrete is more similar. But yeah. So for those, and I think we'll go to the interiors soon, where we could use the other tools. But let's say if we did like this piece specifically, and we just want to add that other addition, like perfectly, we could use the render selection tool with the lock seed as well. So okay, this is not using the render selection. This is just kind of same settings, different geometry, but same seed. So if we wanted to, we come here and under the refine tab, we could just kind of select that area where we know, here, I'll actually do it this way. I'll make it kind of a bit bigger. Where we know what kind of change our design. And then render that with, here, we'll probably use a little bit of a blend there. So we'll render that and then everything else outside of that kind of highlight will be exactly the same. But the part that we're inside our kind of selection there would be the new render. Okay, so we go there. Right. So let's see if I could go back and forth. So yeah, so I'll just delete these intermediate ones just to show. So this is kind of the same seed with the, not the render selection. This is with render selection. Wait, did I not do the right one? Oh, let me do that again, actually. Not sure if I chose the right one. Yeah, let me try that one more time. Okay. And then, yeah, let's go with that. Yeah, and actually, it might actually be the case that this one doesn't use the background. So I might be actually going skipping ahead of myself a bit. Let's see. So there's a behavior with the, I'll explain that a little bit. So there's a behavior with the render selection, which we want to kind of expose to the end user, but right now it's kind of hard coded. Right now, the newest version, I'm not sure if this one has actually rolled out, uses kind of the base geometry always, which is what you'd like to get from there. Whereas I think the prior setting was that it used whatever you've rendered already for the geometry. So it would render select on this geometry. So let me double check that. Yeah, it seems like that's the case actually. So this is not the this is the live one. We have not rolled that update yet out. So I'll leave it how it is. Okay, cool.
And here's
Yeah.
also one more question. I would like to know whether there is a limit to the prompt length. Also, is it better to have prompt detail and as specific as possible, or keep it simple?
It's actually good to keep it pretty simple but descriptive. We have a whole post about how to create prompts. But the longer they are, there's a prompt length. I think it's 64 tokens, which depends. It comes out with different characters. It could be like 200 characters, it could be 300 characters, depending on how you've written it. For example, if you have a lot of thes in there and other characters, then that doesn't consume as much of the tokens. But yeah, yeah, there's a limit to what happens after the after the prompt is too long. It just doesn't consider the rest of it. Essentially, it truncates it.
And could you say where this limit?
Yeah, so like I said, I think
Around.
so it's 64 tokens. That's something that we could.
So
Yeah,
this
we
is
have this
all.
idea in the backlog to kind of expose that to show people how where we're at, because it's not specifically characters. Because depending how you've written your prompt, it could be like some prompts could be a little bit longer and they're still acceptable.
I
If that
see.
makes sense.
Okay. And
Uh,
maybe this is also answering the next question, which is what is the maximum token limit of Veras?
yeah, 64. Yeah,
64. All right.
yeah.
And if I could also add something to this question, is there, I don't know, some sort of documentation or recommendations about
Yes.
the prompts that
Yes, let me pull that up. So we do have our forum. I'm just gonna pull this link up here. And this is the Evolve Lab forum where we have quite a few different posts here. So if I go to Veras, for example, there's the workflows tab, and that's where we kind of have some really neat articles on workflows. This one's a good one with like render seed for prompts. Let me actually just search it. Prompt. Okay, this one's one article. So this is kind of like a mini guide on some ideas on how to like and things to kind of put in a prompt,
nice.
um, and kind of order and how to test it, how to compose it, and some examples. Yeah. So yeah, this is there's a lot of kind of articles on our forum, and for prompting, I think this is a pretty decent one to look through.
Okay,
Yeah.
and one more question related to the prompts. Another question for whitened prompts. Do we use only parentheses or and do multiply of them relate a higher priority?
Yeah, that's definitely one way to emphasize certain things. So yeah, so you could actually stack um, those parentheses. Let me see, where are we? Right here. So one parentheses would be kind of like one emphasis, but you could kind of um, add more parentheses on that, depending on how important you want to make that. And you, so that's one thing. You use parentheses to emphasize parts of the prompt. And the other thing to note is um, the prompt that is the verbiage or the text that's in the beginning of the prompt is naturally automatically somewhat heavier than at the end of the prompt.
Huh.
That's just how it works, kind of like
So the
how,
sequence is
yeah,
also important.
exactly. Yeah, the sequence does matter. Yeah, you could try, I mean, let me undo this little funky thing here. Like if I say white building during winter, or I say during winter and then white building, you with the same seed, because you know that will keep everything else the same. We could see the difference. So I could say this. Let's say Yeah, so that does matter. I'll run a quick example of that. Okay, so I'll run one like this. And then once we kind of zero in on one of them, we could swap these two phrases and then see what happens with the same exact seed. Yeah, so prompt composition is really kind of, okay, so let's say we choose this one. This is our seed. If I wanted to replace these, or swap them, and render that once, we'll see. It might not be a big difference, but we'll see a difference there. This is a pretty bright image, actually. Let's see. Yeah, we could get rid of some of these funkier ones that we were playing with. Yeah, so you could see how it's the same kind of, almost everything is the same, but we changed the season to be first and then the object of the building to be there second. So put more emphasis on the rest of kind of the background more, actually, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Any other questions or comments on the?
No, there aren't any anymore, so you could continue. Yeah.
Yeah, great, cool. So we'll move to interiors a little bit, and then I also want to kind of get closer to just some of the materiality. For example, like if we wanted to respect some more of the materiality from the design. So I'm just gonna move my view here. Let's see, maybe we go here.
While we were doing this, a question pops up. Can we adjust the image size and aspect ratio the way we do in Midjourney?
So we could change the width and the height, which affects your aspect ratio. We don't have a way to input the aspect ratio as like a number and then change that. We do actually want to change the UI of this. We just have two simple sliders for that. We have a component that will just kind of give you that instead, and then you get to pick, by aspect ratio, or automatically kind of get it from the Revit view if you're in Revit, because it starts off with a square, a 1-to-1 ratio in the beginning. So not yet.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, cool. So one thing I'll do for this too is I'll turn off the edges because I want us to go through. Okay, so let's do that. So if I refresh this, it should look like that, because I want us to kind of explore also kind of what it looks like if we were trying to retain more of the geometry. Okay, so I'll start off with a basic prompt that we have here, and I'll start to kind of change it to make it more describing our scene here. Okay, so this one's living room. I'll make this cropped a bit more. So it wouldn't be living room, it'll be kind of office. Well, it's kind of like a lobby space. We could keep the black leather sofa, wood floor. We could keep that part too. Okay, let's just run with this one. See what we get. Let me see if we could hide the zoom bar. Oh, maybe it'll go away. Yeah, so I just went to one of the interior views from this sample model and kept most of the settings the same from that one, and changed it around a bit. Okay, so we can start to see what it is doing with our design. Maybe I don't want like the forest. It seems a bit too dominant. So I'll take that out and I'll render a few more. And I'll lower actually my geometry override to kind of stay more close to what we have in our design. So I'll render 4 more. Yeah, it looks like, no, that does come through quite nicely, actually. Okay, so I'm running for more with kind of lower geometry override. And then, let's see. Oh, kind of missed that exterior, actually. We do have to have something outside. Maybe we say cityscape or something. So let's see, I think we had, so just nature maybe. Let's try that. Because these seem pretty, it looks like an office space behind it as well. So I don't like that. Okay. My seating looks pretty decent, I would say. So I do like that. Okay, now let's say that yeah, I think these renditions are a bit better. Let's say we kind of I don't know, wanna stay with something like this, but we would like to keep more of the original colors. So that's where the material override comes into play. So if I lower this and just, let's actually lower it all the way down, see how close we can get. By lowering the material override, it tries to look at the material information from the Revit model. So we can see how we have these red bins here and, kind of these, this colorization. Let's see what we get. So yeah, you can see here how it's even like the color tone starts to look a lot closer to what's in Revit. There's still some artifacts here that I don't like. But this is where, like, if I go into Revit and I change materials of my sofa, let's say, to something else, that will start to get picked up more. So let's say I think I still have black leather sofa in here, so I should probably delete that. So lobby, leather sofa. Okay, there you go. Try that. So if I go, let's say, if I go to this one, I wonder if that's the material that we could set through the type or something else. Okay, so it looks like it's a type-based. Let me see if there is a way. Okay, no, looks like we have to probably duplicate the type. Sure, I'm not gonna name it, sorry. And we'll go with something like,
Okay.
yeah,
Is it
very
gonna
bad.
is
Don't do that.
is
Don't
it
do what I do.
is it gonna respect the realistic the appearance? So I'm trying to figure out if we make a graphic override based on uh, the hidden line or the consistent color mode, not the appearance of the material. I guess it is extracting the information from the appearance. So
It's the image itself, the output. So even if you do like lighting, like the yellow kind of tone that we have from the sky, it's kind of the image input. So it's the Revit
yeah,
output.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
If that
it's
makes
not. Yeah, we already talked about it. It is driven by the pixels, not by the information from Revit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
um
Okay.
we want to make sure that that's refreshed and that we would see that change there. Yeah, and I think the reds didn't come out as like these light browns, so not all the colors are that well respected, but like you can see that the yellow kind of wall stayed kind of like a yellowish tone,
Mm-hmm.
and this stayed as a kind of tan color. But yeah, let's see what happens. So I'll just render 4 of them. Let's see what we have with these other versions. These are the versions before we kind of changed the red color. So this one looks pretty close to well before we changed the red, actually, even with the kind of limestone kind of texture there. Yeah. Right. Okay, there you go. It actually did make it red. So um that's cool. Get the but this kind of bin here made it into wood, so it's interesting how that remained red, but this one didn't. So I guess that's okay. Yeah, okay. This rendition it didn't make it red, so I kind of kept them all the same. Yeah, so by
Nice.
lowering these, you kind of have even more control because you can start to kind of change the colors in your model, and then that will start to kind of further define. And that's also where if you do kind of lower that, um, let's say if you wanted to have like a night scene, even the background gets like if the background is white, it's going to be harder to make it a night scene because kind of that's kind of the colorization that you have for those pixels. So it tries to stay a lot closer to what you are inputting. It doesn't give it as much freedom to be creative on besides what your image in Revit starts to matter more, which is why even the edges are turned off. So those don't come into my rendering as actual edges, as features, like, oh, those are black stripes everywhere in my, my model. If that makes sense.
Yeah, like some profiles or
hmm
other objects which they aren't. I see.
hmm
Nice. Okay.
What's cool about this, you could kind of go back and forth. So what I mean by that is, let's say I want to like, okay, I want this to be respected because it's pretty well designed. But let's say I want like, I don't know, uh, let's say I want to change my floor to be uh, like don't respect the material. So I could combine that is what I'm trying to say. So I could just kind of make a selection here. Okay. And then I could just have a lot of override for everything and just say this is I don't know, polished gray concrete, and then render a few of these. And then I could blend that with kind of my highly constrained part of the design versus this is also useful for like backgrounds. Like let's say you wanted to kind of really constrain your design because it's further developed in your model, but your background or entourage behind your building or under building is not well defined. So you could increase these settings and kind of get, really loose. And so you'll see what happens. Like, and for this, I probably do want to change my settings here to something a bit for a blur blend. Yeah, you can see how like that's combining them.
Would it be possible with this workflow to even add objects? So just to select again the zone and to say not polished gray concrete, but to I don't know, say more chairs, bins, or whatever. So using this feature not only to change the material, but to add some context.
Yeah, so that's a mode that we could do, but we haven't enabled it or haven't exposed it in the front end. So there's three modes that we'd like to have. Right now, it's just the one mode that you don't select. It's built in. But right now, if you select anything, it uses the structures that's there. So it has to have floor there or has to have some, like for example, if I wanted to select this piece, I want to add a person sitting here, it won't allow you to do that because there's these lines that will just kind of cut that person essentially because it needs to respect the geometry that
Yes.
you have here. And so with that new mode, we will be able to add that. There's three modes actually, the ability to um, add context aware, the other one to respect the structure, which is what we currently have. And then one is like if you want to use the top or the bottom level of kind of your layering system. Um, but yeah, not yet. It's coming.
Okay.
So good comment. Let's see. Cool. We've gone through these.
One more question here. Are there any specific shapes and forms that are difficult to render with Veras?
Yeah, definitely. So one thing that we are for this specific example here too, that is something that we're trying to get a lot better retention. And just FYI, we are actually working on version 2 of Veras that will actually does address this. But fine details, especially if they're kind of further in the distance. So if you look at this view for us, there are these fins here that are kind of sitting outwards from the
Yeah.
facade.
Mm-hmm.
And so these render quite okay, but the further we go out to here, that we get challenges with here. These might get interpreted as mullions, for example, when they're further in the distance. So the kind of density and detail that you have does matter. So kind of, especially for like, well, for interior views, Objects that are a lot closer are much better defined because they're kind of within your view. But further away objects and intricate further away objects, the intricate details tend to get a bit lost, you know, as you render.
Okay, I see. All right.
Yeah, any other comments?
No.
Okay, cool. I do want to show one more thing here.
Yeah.
So so again, we mostly stayed in the Revit side, but Veras is also a web app. So if we go to let's see here, veras.com, it's getting some loading. Veras.evolvelab.io actually. It has kind of the same or a very similar interface that you see in Revit, except it's kind of the web app version, and it works with images. So you could actually upload, you know, your own images. I'll just upload something, and then, you know, you could render off of that. Okay, maybe it's not a good example. Let me get an actual better example here. So I'm just going to drag and drop an image here. You could work off of the image itself, actually. Okay, so looks like that one started to do some funky things here. Go back to here. And for this, I would probably, that's where the geometry override is more important, because you probably don't want like some of the like subtle differences in how loosely the sketch is made to be picked up in the render. So I'll probably kind of go higher geometry override here. And then if I render a few of these, we'll see what happens. Yeah, so it looks like the bubbly ones, we start off with those, but let's get rid of those for now. Okay. Yeah, so this is pretty useful for like very quick ideation. Okay, there you go. So you can see here how like these lines were kind of corrected. They became kind of vertical versus kind of this diagonal. And like they're kind of, that looseness kind of started to get a little bit constrained. So we can see that for these, and we could try a few different ideas here. Let's see. Okay. Just did that, and then see what we get. Yeah, so I think with sketches, you could kind of really, oh, that one looks really interesting. It's more like a sculpture, actually. Say it's a building. Let's add an architect, maybe. See how we get after that. Oh, that's interesting. Kind of made this like a floating little concrete element. Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is fun.
Definitely.
Pretty addictive, actually. A lot of you could spend a lot of time just having exploring different ideas and different kind of renditions, and it's quite a lot of fun.
Could you say that Veras is better and in at interior design or at exterior? So what do you think it is? Is it because from your experience, I'm sure that you experimented a lot and you saw a lot of results. Based on that, is it better for aerial views, exterior, or it's better at in the interior?
Yeah, so I really depends on kind of the design and the scale of the design. It does a sometimes it's better at exteriors than interiors. But yeah, I would say it's pretty decent at both. I think it has some challenge with really large designs, meaning like if you have like a high rise and you have a lot of intricate detail that you're trying to preserve, that's where you know, it gets a bit more artistic. Whereas like for a lot of mid-sized buildings, it's really good at, you know, high retention and really good at kind of keeping exactly what you see on there. Oh, look at this one. This one's really fun.
So if the elements become too many, if the detail is too high, then maybe it is a bit struggling. But for mid-size buildings, the result will be very satisfying, you say.
Yeah, yeah, it does a pretty good job at retaining you know, what's there in your design and kind of presenting it in a very kind of aesthetically um, you know, well composed way.
Okay, and maybe it's a good time to ask one more question here that we've got in the beginning. It is related to something that you mentioned, that there will be a newer version, more features. So one of our participants here is asking, would be great to talk more about the roadmap and the upcoming feature that are coming. So maybe if you could share some more insights
Sure.
on what we could expect in the future.
Of course, yeah. So we're looking at this quarter, and I might get pushed to next quarter if we get any kind of roadblocks. But and I would say within the next few months here, we're looking at a version 2 release, and we have some other releases in between. We might bundle V2 or not. But the big things are that we'll be updating is our own 3D viewer. So you'll be able to do a lot of things with the 3D viewer in terms of geometry retention. And just kind of if you saw the selection tools that we have for render selection, that will all be kind of using a lot of the metadata that is coming from your parent software. So like Revit categories, live Revit materials, families, instances, types, and selection by those kind of things. Those are things that are coming, and those are kind of like the biggest changes that we will see in version 2, which will really allow you to have additional control to a lot of, you know, your workflow, and it enables Veras to be a lot more useful in kind of the later stages. It's very useful already kind of in the early stages with schematic design, ideation, but version 2 will really enable and allow you to have even more control for when you kind of past that and you have a lot of geometry modeled in your model, like you have a lot of detail already that you are retaining, and that you're just really kind of changing maybe colorization of the material. Like, you know that it's going to be wood, you know it's going to be concrete, but then which variation of that, you know. The tooling will really enable for those kind of workflows.
So it's going to be able to extract information not only from the image itself, from the pixels, but also from the authoring software like Revit
Yes.
or whatever you're using, and extract this metadata and help this build the end result. That sounds very promising, because right
Yeah.
now we are dealing with images pretty much and pixels, and whatever we put inside the model is pretty much useless. Maybe not useless, but still the end result is mostly based on the image itself and
Exactly.
each
Yeah.
pixel.
Yeah, and
Nice.
with different settings, whatever the image is, it's more important. So, like, you know, the aesthetic of what your Revit or the Revit output is more important, whereas that becomes less important, but the actual data becomes more important. Yeah.
Nice. And also one more here. Are there going to be a beta test invites like the glyph?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, definitely. We
All
do
right.
want, because it's a big change and there's a lot of, you know, compatibility with a lot of models. So we will make an announcement. Trying to think if maybe, you know, how you said at the end to send you like a bunch of links. Maybe we could, that could be one of the links in there at the end, where people could just go and sign up for early access to test the new version. Yeah,
Sounds good.
great.
So everybody should be able to receive the link through the materials that we're gonna send
Yeah.
after mistakes.
Mhm,
Sound
mhm.
good. Nice.
Definitely.
Okay, one more here, one more question. Which AI model is Veras based on?
So we use a lot of different models actually. We use all the popular ones, if that makes sense. It's Stable Diffusion. It's based on Stable Diffusion.
Okay, thanks. I hope
Mhm. Mhm.
this is enough. Nice. All right. Um, and if I ask something else here, it's related generally to AI. We see here an implementation of AI for renderings, but do you see another application in the IC sector that are very promising and that you could see the AI be able to help a lot?
What sector is that?
In the architecture and construction sector, in our field,
Mhm.
where do you see the AI? Maybe not only in rendering, but in some other tasks. It could be maybe very helpful in some
Oh,
other
definitely.
other
Yeah,
fields.
yeah, that makes sense. That's a very kind of maybe broad question, but we see so the image based obviously the Veras product that we have is kind of looking at the imagery and bridging, you know, starting there and then going into even like geometry generation, but that's still kind of like for the design aspect of your process. We do see, for example, some people might be already familiar with Glyph. It seems like from the chat, we do see kind of using large language models for a lot more automation, because a lot of things are not image based. There's a lot of data, like Glyph is one of our examples where a Copilot interface is used to auto document. Essentially, you could just write out with natural language, what you want to document. You could say create sheets 100 for rooms 100 through 101, 109, and it knows that that means 100, 101. And if there's no 103, it skips it and it goes to 104. It actually understands the UI selection where you'd have to click like 10 elements or something like that in a certain specific order. So just kind of automating the user interface with a simple chat interface. That's kind of a simple example, but we think, and I believe that the implications of this technology is much deeper. Like we could do so much more than that, and even that is a lot. So yeah, definitely see a lot of uses for like documentation, for sequencing, for yeah, there's a lot of pragmatic applications for large language models, I would say.
Yeah, that's very true. And yeah, from what you're saying, I see that you're not seeing this as a threat or something that's gonna make us obsolete, but rather than a next level tool or next level, I don't know, software that we're gonna use to help us, not replace somehow any of us. And talking about that, maybe we need to somehow redirect our uh, skills and maybe to look for resources uh, to catch up with what's going on with the technology. If you want to share some of the resources that are going to be useful for us, it would be nice. Maybe not right now, or maybe
Mhm.
later. When you provide the additional information, you may include some other resources that you find useful. Uh,
Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree with that sentiment. Like, we don't think it's gonna replace people. We think it's just gonna accelerate people to do more. And I think the human ingenuity is critical and pivotal to kind of the progression of the technology and its practical applications. So yeah, I don't think any of the tools are really kind of replacing even the rendition part. It's kind of the end user is pretty far involved with the process,
nice.
and
Okay.
should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. All right. All right. Okay. So if somebody wants to ask something, now is the time because we are almost at the in the end now. So we're gonna wait a little bit more if anybody wants to ask something. And yeah, if you want to say some uh, I don't know, share some final thoughts or to say something else.
Um, yeah, if there's no other questions, or if we're waiting for a few more questions, it's been great to have the opportunity to speak with you guys and to share what we're doing. I'm generally very optimistic and excited for the future. I think we're living in a time where things are moving so rapidly in a positive way. I think that I don't know, the landscape will be so interesting in like 5 years from now, and how, like, you know, the built environment is being shaped and better augmented, in my opinion, by tools that provide better automation. And that's how I see it. I think when I started on my journey on with architecture, it seemed very behind other industries, and with kind of developments in AI, machine learning, large language model, diffusion-based modeling, or imagery, it's kind of like taking that unstructured data that we many times don't have structured, and starts to use it in a way that is useful, and it's actually powerful. So I'm just generally very excited for the future, and, you know, living in this time when all these things are happening, and being able to affect it to a certain small degree. So yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I cannot wait to see what's next.
Yeah, me too.
All right, great. So thank you for joining us and presenting all this to us. It was a real pleasure, and I see that the future is gonna bring us even more exciting things. So yeah,
Sorry, can I ask a final question?
sure, go ahead.
First of all, I'm very impressed by this software because I have played with Stable Diffusion a little bit and I couldn't get those results about architecture. So there was a question, I think, if you could add objects to the scene, isn't it possible to add people in the, let's say, in the front in this picture? I think I have seen tutorials that add people, I'm quite sure, but I'm not sure if it was Veras.
Yeah, so right now, if we wanted to add people, we'd have to add them in the 3D view, like, because it needs to have some kind of line work to go off of before we enable that workflow to kind of disregard what's in the Revit view. So it does, like, we could add people in Entourage as long as we have something that represents it, like even just loose line work, and then it could fill in the gaps. Like for example, for the interior, let me just go this way. For the interior view here, we do have actually people in here, these RCP people. But even if it was something as loose as like this line work here, that would still be enough to be able to render people, for example. Or if there's no like in the beginning when I was making the white box models, if it's just a blank area on the page, if that's all blank, then it could add context there, as long as there's no competing geometry that will kind of like cut through it. But that's something that we would like to add, so that like a mode where people could swap from the two, and then if they just want to make an additive kind of context-aware addition with a render selection, we could do it that way.
But how come it's possible to invent landscape and not possible to invent people? Maybe
It
it's a
can.
technical question.
Yeah, no, it can. It's just something we haven't like it could definitely do it. It's just it's competing with something else, like part of the building is kind of cutting through that, and then we're trying to respect. So it's competing goals essentially. So now it takes everything that's in the model, thinking, okay, it has to be the model. We just have to kind of do it, like enable it in a mode where it's like, okay, forget the model. I just, in this rectangle, the model doesn't exist. Be creative. Yeah. So we just have to kind of add that as some kind of mode that you could switch from, and then that would allow that.
Okay, nice. So once more, thank you for your time and the nice presentation. And I hope I don't know, we could schedule another one once you release the new features, maybe in the future.
Yeah, that'll be great. Definitely will be happy to come back. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.